3-day chamber events and expect to get or hope to get another 30 grand this year. And they will be finalizing their 2023 goals in February. And Kelly Evco, our economic development staff person, participated in the town leadership retreat to discuss priorities for next year and attended the Virginia Tech Industrial Development Authority, commonly known as VITA Institute Conference. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Andre.
No formal report, but I must observe that the Stafford High School Alumni Caucus is now fully seated on this end of council.
I put the most association with drifters right in the middle. I don't know. Did I? No, didn't have to do that. Yeah, Mr. Allison.
So Parks and Rec, we had a meeting last night. One of the items that we need to discuss is the reappointment of Karen Granovich and Nisha Thompson. So I would like to discuss that tonight as well. Along with that, they're going to have a work session January 17th at 6 p.m. And they will have a new member recommendations during that time period. There was applicants to fulfill a seat. So they're going to be reviewing those.
Do you want to do the vacancies? Can we do them at the regular meeting or does it expire prior to the regular meeting? We also had a request from the Housing Authority to remove that, and we should be doing all these vacancies, I think, as a block.
I think the chair, Karen, is this month. I think Nisha's was last month, at the end of the month.
Why are they staggered like that? Let's fix that.
I don't know.
Okay. I think we should do them all as a block.
Can we put them all on the consent agenda for the regular meeting?
Yeah, there are several I think that need to get addressed.
And then hopefully for that next meeting, they'll have the recommendation for the new person, so we can add them to it as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I think we should get an organized list of all the vacancies. There's several commissions, so let's just try to get a handle on that. I'm gonna kind of point to task everybody after this meeting too, that any of the other empty seats, try to bring a name forward, because, you know, if we have vacancies on these commissions, we have problems meeting quorum, and then we have problems operating. So we want your participation. If you're sitting in the audience, then that means you enjoy local government, you should come and join our advisory commission. All right.
I have one more.
Oh, sorry.
So the planning commission, their next meeting is going to be January 26th. Just to let everybody know that the next month, which is February going forward, it's probably going to move to the second week of the month instead of the last week of the month. So they want to try to get rid of that last week of the month to get away from Thanksgiving, Christmas, other holidays, Memorial Days, where people tend to take off so they can actually perform like we discussed.
Yeah.
So that way it's also in line with our, this meeting and then our following meeting, they'll be right in the middle. So if they have something that needs to come out right away, we can address it at our next meeting rather than kind of waiting a whole month of process.
Okay.
Just as a,
Yeah, no, I don't have any issue with it. My first thought is just that, sometimes the gap between the planning commission and our meetings is important for advertising between them.
understood.
Yeah.
They were just trying to alleviate some of the issues.
No, I agree. Having quorum is even more important. Okay,
That's all I have. Thank you.
sounds good. Ms. Robertson? Yeah.
The only thing that I'd like to share tonight is that I want to thank everyone for having faith in me that I get these other opportunity to be on town council for another 2 years. So I really appreciate it.
Mr. Williams?
Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. I haven't had a chance to meet with town manager or public works director over the last couple of weeks of the holidays and everything, but I just wanted to thank Diane, our new public works, well, not new anymore, but She's done a great job working with me over the last several months. I appreciate her answering all my questions and being very prompt with everything. So that's really refreshing. And I know that I already talked to the mayor. She's talking about possibly switching up liaisons. I was hoping to stick with Public Works for a little bit longer, especially with all the big things coming up in the next year with the big projects and everything. But I understand we got to switch things up. So, but I do want to thank Chris and Bill and everybody who at Public Works who showed me around, gave me tours, and helped me understand the operations a little bit better. So thank you all.
I think they said still send cookies though to the holiday party. I don't know, Mr. Wood, you probably haven't met with the school, but just taking Andrea's seat, but if there's anything you'd like to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Madam Mayor. You know, it's, when you take an oath to the Constitution, as all of you guys have done, it really is a life-changing moment. And it really reinforces the notion that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people is for all the people. So I am humbled and awed by the opportunity that Columbia Beach has given me. And I'm going to do my level best to represent each man and woman in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anything to report. There weren't a lot of meetings between the last one, which was right before Christmas, and this one. So I just want to just hope that everybody had a good holiday and a happy new year. And I'm looking forward to starting off 2023. And thank you to all of the staff that worked really hard for this last year and continue to look forward to the new challenges that we will see in the next year, particularly this there. Because of the Central Raiders project, not for any other reason. All right, I don't have any presentations today. I will open up for citizen input if anybody would like to come up for that.
Nobody signed up.
Nobody signed up? Okay, Happy New Year. We don't have old business because it's a new year, but we do have a lot of new business. So we'll move right into some of our organizational items that are part of January. First up is the election of our vice mayor. I'll open up for nominations to, yes, Ms. Robertson.
May I, Ms. Mayor?
Sure.
I would like to nominate Mr. Allison as vice mayor.
All right, is there a second to the nomination?
Second.
Second, right? Karen seconded, Tom nodded and seconded. All right, is there any other nominations?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Tom Moncur.
Okay.
Fails for 1 second.
Is there a second?
What?
He said no. So I think it will, Helen seconded.
Actually, I probably should reconsider considering the great pay that is associated with y'all.
Well, if Tom's going to withdraw his name, I'll nominate Karen Sullivan.
I would decline that. I'm unable to fill that role with my new business to be everywhere at a moment's notice.
Okay. All right, is there any other nomination? Okay. All right, we'll take a vote for Mr. Allison. I'll do a roll call vote. Dr. Sullivan?
Aye.
All right, Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Sustain.
Do you accept, will you accept that?
Let's not be bashful.
Oh, come on.
All right, aye.
Okay, there we go. Mr. Wood?
That's an easy one. Aye.
Okay, Ms. Williams?
Nay.
Okay, and Ms. Robertson?
Aye.
Okay, vote aye. Welcome to it. And thank you so much, Ms. Robertson, for everything over the last year, your support, and filling in for me when I can't be places, not just here at the council meetings, but I also have to call the vice mayor to attend events that I can't get to because I can't be everywhere at once. And anyway, it's just really important, the support of all council members, but that vice mayor position gets leaned on a little bit. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
All right. Next is liaison assignments. And I'm gonna follow our current bylaws, although I know we'll have a discussion about this in our bylaw revisions. I'm trying to give everybody a committee or commission first because there are meetings for all of these things, and that way there wasn't one person assigned to multiple meetings of multiple commissions. So I'll start on this side. Dr. Sel Sullivan is the Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Monter is Public Safety. Mr. Allison, Parks and Rec and Finance. Ms. Robertson, School Board. Mr. Williams, Economic Development. And Mr. Wood is Public Works and NGOs. All right, that'll start us off in the new year. All right, next up is the resolution of establishment of the town council meeting schedule. The meeting schedule is presented in the packet under tab A. Last year, we nixed the July 5th work session because of the holiday, and obviously a lot of people are doing things during that time, so I would propose to go ahead and nix that again this year. I just think, for planning purposes, to go ahead and, know that that's not gonna be there in our agenda, helps free up staff during that really intense holiday time period.
May I?
Yeah, sure. Ms. Robertson.
I was thinking along the lines, if we did not need a work session, because sometimes I don't think we need one, to eliminate those that aren't necessary, at whatever time it may be, that it's an on-need basis.
Do you want to still reserve the dates for the?
I would say to
possibility?
reserve the dates, but again, if we need one, we need one. If we don't, then we just don't have that work session.
The further discussion on that concept?
I don't have a problem with canceling one if we don't need it, but I'd like to have them pre-populated on the public calendar and then a notice go out if we decide to cancel them.
I would agree with Dr. Sullivan. A lot of times I hear people say they feel as if legislation just kind of comes at them, and if we eliminate one of those work sessions, that's the opportunity for folks to lobbyists try to make us see their points of view and feel as if they have some say in the outcome of the legislation. So I understand if we have a work session that we don't have to spend a lot of time on, that's great. But I don't think less government is more government, if that makes any sense.
No, that one doesn't follow me, but I understand the other points that you're making.
It got to the point, and the reason that I bring this up, it got to the point where we were just having another meeting. It wasn't a work session. It was two separate meetings that were at opposite ends at many times. So that was the thought behind it.
I think I've heard that comment before from Mr. Monter as well about work sessions just being an additional meeting.
Yeah, that's not an artful distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it is a distinction, the way they're planned. Now, some things come up that we end up doing more at a work session, maybe decision-making that are not normally done, but I feel like in order to have good discussions about things that are going to be voted on at the regular meeting, that a work session gives an extra opportunity for public input, but it also gives an extra opportunity for us to discuss the item, whatever it be that we're going to vote on in some depth, rather than have a meeting that goes on until midnight when it's a regular meeting.
My calendar's already booked for all these dates to you all, so it doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
I'll just give my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I actually like the work sessions, but I would actually like to see more focused on work session type items, like public works, like for example. There's a lot of stuff going on, so maybe we could dedicate these meetings to big things like that. Things that are going on in planning commission that we can discuss, like Airbnbs that have been on the menu for a year and a half. Things like that, we can maybe start focusing more on. I wouldn't be opposed to maybe canceling one a quarter, just, maybe like 4th of July and stuff like that, just, give us a little bit of a break, and residents too. So that's my 2 cents.
I was looking through, last year's calendar. I do this at the end of every year to just kind of recap for myself, like what we got done over the last year, because it kind of is a lot more than you can think of off the top of your head. And, March is kind of a dip in our regular procedural stuff, but April is robust because budget season is really getting underway, and by May, we're adopting budgets. So, just to kind of throw out there, I think March is one that maybe that would be a possibility. The summer, we tend to kind of slow down because the town is so busy that it's too much to do all of it. So I think that July one is that's kind of crazy to ask people to come July 5th after the July 4th holiday here, which is insane. October is really busy, actually, believe it or not, because we do the legislative agenda, the Halloween proclamations, it's a quarterly report month. We did the PPTRA tax rates last year in October. So either September or November is kind of one. So maybe, yeah.
One of the things that we've talked about before, and I can't remember where, but doing on a more regular basis town halls where we open the floor up to the public to talk about a topic. And perhaps if we wanted to do those quarterly or say 3 times a year because summer is so busy, then doing that at a work session would eliminate the problem of having to add another meeting. And if we plan on what those topics are, I know there are a lot of topics coming up that we're doing some research on, and having a town hall at the work session would kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Tom looks like he wants to say something.
Well, we invite public comment at every meeting. And I don't know that a town hall serves any greater purpose for public comment than the opportunity that we have at every meeting.
I would disagree because the only people that come to speak during public comment period are the people that have a strong position on something that's about to be coming up. And it doesn't get, that we don't have a chance to promote that to the whole town and possibly bring in more people that want to have a say in it. So I think a town hall on specific topics as we go forth with making decisions for the town on policies and procedures is just another way of inviting the public to give us more input.
So I think I'm hearing a little bit of consensus from what Mr. Williams said, what you're saying, not necessarily so much on the town hall aspect, but on the idea that dedicating a work session more to issues with that are ongoing at a department or a policy thing seems to be of interest. So if that, maybe we just leave the calendar like it is without the July 4th meeting, but put under consideration that March and November months that have a little bit more, less regular administrative things in them, could be considered as good times for those. I'm just trying to forecast a little bit.
And our town manager can update us more on the different things that we have to iron out, but I'm not sure parking has been totally ironed out for the next season. I know that Parks and Rec, there's a study going on for that. And there are other items like that that are big items that the town wants to have input on. But if we don't advertise and promote it, hey, here's your chance, they often come in as an afterthought or the night we're voting.
Is there more discussion? Do you have anything?
That seemed almost like it was an open-ended question for me, so I'll jump in. I think as it relates to the town hall concept, we've had a couple. I think in the last year we did one on parking during the parking study. We did that during the day, and that was I think really successful. We got a lot of feedback there. We've also been working obviously on surveys and different outreach with the public from a community engagement perspective over the year. So I think if we wanted to frame out a town hall, going back to our strategic action plan goal areas and giving maybe one work session a quarter to an update on things government performance related, updates on livability and placemaking, which some of those items could fall under. So we're not taking one meeting to talk about necessarily one option or one item, but maybe two or three. And we could probably focus that way and have a Q&A session, however you all would like, is an option. I think to go to the potential meetings that could be canceled, I've worked in places where that July meeting definitely, but also the August meeting coming back in September. And then potentially the October meeting in December based on the holidays and workflow. So I think those are all options for dates to look at.
October instead of November? I found we did a lot of stuff in October.
I think looking at it quarterly and looking at just some of our normal workload, that November gives us some time before the holiday season. Nobody really wants to meet in December. I think that's just kind of not that much, I should say. And that's also my birthday, so shameless plug for not meeting my birthday December 6th. But I think the rest of the days going along with our budget meetings, obviously March 1st is necessary, April, May, as you mentioned, we're deep in budget season. And then getting anything out of the way before we really get into our deep summer months in June, I think is important as well.
Good, I'm glad I brought this up.
Yeah, I actually worry about that September 6th work session, which is very close after Labor Day. Mm-hmm. All right, so I've heard some discussion on this. Is there a motion to either preemptively strike some of these work sessions, or is there a motion to adopt the calendar as it stands and then as we work through the year?
I'd like to move that we adopt the calendar as it stands.
Okay, without the July 5th meeting though.
So
Second.
So we would eliminate automatically the July 5th,
Correct,
but the rest of the calendar would be adopted as stands.
correct. Okay, it's been seconded. Is there further discussion on that? All right, seeing no other discussion on that, I'm gonna call consensus vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Salome was.
Yeah, I'm right down. Okay. All right, bylaws. All right, we don't have to adopt them tonight because we just got red lines to these yesterday from the town attorney. So, I just want to open the adoption of the 2023 bylaws for discussion tonight as a work session. Do you want to read us into what you sent us, Stefan? Just overview of what
Oh,
you
you want
sent
an
us?
overview?
Yeah,
Sure. What I did was took the 2022 bylaws and rules of procedure and read through them and tried to find out what the authority was for everything in there. So I had to do a pretty comprehensive review of the Virginia code, which every year changes more and more. So some of the things have changed a little bit and some of the things have changed a lot. So I did a red line so you could see what those things were. And then along the way, I made a lot of changes to make things consistent with the code and to make things within the, what I call the bylaws, the short name, consistent within the document. And what I've come up with, and I wrestled with how to do this to make it readable, but give you enough authority. And I ultimately decided to put footnotes in for the citations. And the idea is that everything that there is authority for shows up in a footnote. And why I think that's important is so that if you have a question about what I've written here, you can go look yourself and see what the Virginia code says. And if you think there's a discrepancy or another option, we can talk about it. But the Virginia code, one thing it does well is it names code sections. So I always like to use the names of the code sections because nobody knows what these numbers are on their face. And, you know, a lot of times if it says electing a vice mayor, you can pretty much count on that code section talks about electing a vice mayor. So, you know, that's a great thing. You don't have to go behind that, but it just tells you what the procedure is and so forth. I suggested, and we talked a little bit about it online, one-on-one, that you do some things when you adopt these bylaws in whatever form they're in at your next meeting. And that was the intent all along, to adopt them at the next meeting, not tonight. I did work hard from January 1 through yesterday to get this to you. So at least you would have an opportunity, and I know some of you had less of an opportunity than others to look at it. But the idea was if you have any resolutions to go along with it or policies that you want to adopt, such as the inclement weather and the remote attendance policy, you can address those at that time. So the idea was to give you some bylaws that really give you just about everything you would need, either on its face or behind, by looking at the references to run these meetings. Obviously, your bylaws currently reference Robert's rules, and we're looking at using the small board form, but it's still in this book. So we're not rewriting this book and putting it in your bylaws, but we do have references to it. There were a couple of areas that were raised that I do think we need to talk about, and I'm not presuming that anybody completely agrees with what I've done or agrees at all, but it's out there. But if you do want to adopt a policy for the inclement weather situation, you'll need to do that. You can do that on the 18th. And then you'll also need to, if you want to be able to have people come remotely when necessary, we'll need to talk about how many times they can do that and under what circumstances. And this is different. This was one of the big changes in the code. This is different than the COVID, we can meet completely remotely and nobody has to come anywhere. This is the old, you got to have a physical quorum, but you have to have a reason to have people occasionally not attend in person. So there's that. And then the other big issue that's going to require some discussion, I hope tonight, is how to handle the liaisons. And I'm learning more about how that's working, just attending these meetings and hearing Dr. Sullivan talk about what she's been doing and finding out what other people have been doing. The idea is not to change what you've been doing, but just to make sure that we've got it properly authorized and the mayor can continue to appoint. And I've tied that in. And also so that we have something that these liaisons are tied to. And I've got some thoughts on that. And most of these, I think, are not going to be hard to do, but some of them are going to require some discussion. And I'm happy to lead that or help with that as you see fit tonight. So there's a lot here, but my suggestion is if people want to point out where they think the issues are, but obviously some things are going to have to change. And I will do that after this meeting and get you a red line before the next meeting that you will be, ultimately have a clean version that you can vote on, and everybody, or at least the majority is comfortable with it.
All right, I'm gonna start with the first question from your red lines, which is the inclement weather issue. And I, correct me if I get this wrong, but the suggestion is that we go ahead and fix a day which a regular meeting would be continued if we had to postpone or cancel. Do that now ahead of time, right in the beginning of the year. That way, if something happens, the, all public notices that were already issued for that regular meeting automatically have a date that they're still good for. Does that make sense, everybody? So,
And that's exactly right, and that's the purpose of it, so you don't have to redo everything. And people have certainty, oh, it's snowing, what are we gonna do? Oh, let's do another, everybody's used to Wednesday, or maybe you go Friday or something, but you can have it, but it's gotta be a specific, this is the procedure.
right, so it could be like, and I think the example you have is like the continue to, or the automatic assumed date would be the following Wednesday. Same time, same place.
And that was just an example, just picked out of, I'm not suggesting anything.
I mean, I'm fine with the following Wednesday. Nope.
Well, no, only at the work session, never mind, regular meeting should be fine, because the second Wednesday is school board. So
Okay.
it's the regular meeting, then it'd be the
Fourth Wednesday again. Okay, so I'm just sticking on this one. If there's any other,
Is it specific for inclement weather, or is it hold for other disasters?
it does
is-
disasters too.
It does. Your old version talked about inclement weather or disaster, and I tracked the latest code language. And the mayor does this. She finds and declares that weather or other conditions are such that it would be hazardous to attend a meeting. So she'll have the authority under state code and these bylaws, if you adopt them, to make that call. So it's not necessarily weather. It can be whatever you can dream up.
Well, I think the week gives us time to recover from something like that. I'm thinking of our straight line winds, the loss of power due to, really bad storms that we've had. A week would generally allow for the town to recover to where we would have power and be able to get around again.
Yeah.
Whereas, a day would not.
Right, just pushing it to the next day, right, would still be the same problematic condition probably. Yeah. Okay, they're kind of I just want to give Steven some direction to, that when he comes back with a full red line, we know where we're at.
So if we do this on an automatic thing, that's going to be automatically a conflict with the school board meeting possibly. Is that right, Heather? That meets here in the same space?
This is only for regular meetings, so no.
Well, this is only for regular meetings, okay.
That's the way it's written right now.
Because the work session, we can just cancel anyway, right?
Yeah, we could just cancel a work session and we would just do whatever we needed to do at the regular meeting. Now, our prior language said any meeting. It did not just say regular meeting. Is there a particular reason why you put the word regular in there?
Yes.
Okay, I figured that was the case.
And it is, and that's why I did this.
15.2-1460.
Correct, it specifies, and I'll double check that, but it specifies, and that's why I do this, because you can't just say meeting if it's gotta be a regular meeting. But I will double check that
Okay,
in real time. Because if it does, then you don't have the authority to do it.
would we rather pick a Tuesday so that in case it's not just regular, it wouldn't conflict with anything else? The following Tuesday?
There's so many regular meetings in this county that are always held on this Tuesday or this Wednesday or this Thursday. I feel like we know that we currently meet on the third Wednesday. There's nothing I know of, other people may, that regularly occurs on the fourth Wednesday. So it kind of, for me, it would be better to keep the same day of the week than trying to conflict with something that may be occurring on the Tuesday or the Thursday.
Fine with me.
And it is, oh, I'm sorry, it is only for regular meetings.
It is.
Yes.
All right, so I'm good with the following Wednesday.
And I know that, um, Mr. Trivett, tell me if I'm wrong, but didn't we meet in the high school a couple of times when I was on the school board because of a conflict like that? So that's something that
It's
is
not a
viable too.
But wouldn't that have to be noticed?
What is it, 48 hours? Something?
No, here's your problem. You've got a code that says if you set these meetings, if you set them at a place and a time, you have to stick with that place and a time unless you do what you're talking about and give notice. What you're trying to do by making it automatic is to not have to do that.
And the school board has to abide by the same standards, right?
Maybe not. This is cities, counties, and towns, and school boards have their own standards for certain things. School boards have to abide by FOIA, just like you do. So that governs a lot of notice that you have to give, like for special meetings, notice has to be reasonable under circumstances. That's true whether you're a school board or town council or city council. But other things like this, maybe not, probably not.
Okay,
So,
but we've also said it's not a conflict.
Yeah.
with the board.
No, but just speaking to Vicky's comment that they moved the school board meeting, they can't be done without notice, is what I was thinking, yeah.
There was, it had to be 48 to 72 hours. It was something, I can't remember. But it worked out just fine.
they moved. They moved.
Yeah,
They moved,
They moved.
we stayed.
Right, because you got the budget. Right.
that's what it-
I mean, moving to the last Wednesday of the month, and this is just emergency situation. So, I mean, I don't think we're gonna do this every single month.
No.
I hope not.
I
So I
I'd
think
like
that
to
fits.
never have to declare a state of emergency. That would be wonderful.
don't know.
And keep in mind too, there's a different way to continue a meeting. If you have a meeting and you have a quorum and you open a meeting, you can continue that meeting at any time you choose without having to renotice anything, so long as you announce it publicly. But that would require actually having a meeting, getting together, and if you have 2 feet of snow, that can't happen.
Right.
But it can be adjourned up until the next meeting. You could actually adjourn it till 5 o'clock on 2 Wednesdays, that type of thing. But that's regular meetings too. Well, I think that's all meetings.
Okay, I think we have a consensus though, to designate the following Wednesday after the regular meeting as the inclement weather hazardous commission temporary day. Riveting stuff out there, guys, right? Just trying to keep you engaged. Okay.
I will.
All right, next question. Is there any more discussion on that before I move down to the next stuff? Okay, so the next question is about these electronic meetings where everything was stricken and rewritten, pretty much. And it is, the first part is about when there is a state of emergency like COVID and the state designates that you can't meet all together and so people can meet electronically, right? So we've been through that first time in many people's lives probably ever. Certainly that was touch and go during the time, so it should be a little bit more seamless if it were to have to happen again, a little bit more prepared for. And then the next section of that is situations other than the declared state of emergency. So I am on, I'm not sure if there's a page number for this red line version, but I'm on B of that section. And my suggestion and comment back to the attorney was that instead of it starting with individual members of council may use remote participation instead of attending a public meeting in person, if in advance of the meeting, the council has adopted a remote participation policy. And just to nix that whole first beginning and just say we adopt a remote participation policy. But now then we have to define it. So we can we can adopt the policy within our bylaws, that way it's already there. It's a little bit cleaner than saying all of this in our bylaws and then adopting a policy in a separate document. But we have to clear up some of the questions that are posted. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the questions are, if you go to B of that section 1, whatever it was, is it 4?
It's on the following page, if I'm following your stuff, where you have quite a big paragraph about the explanation of these things, and then 1 and 2.
Right. And 1 and 2 are the decisions you need to make. And there are parameters, they have to be within something, but it's, your policy has to, and I agree, I think if you're gonna do this, it should be within these bylaws. That's a good, simple way to do it. But you have to, and all this is from the Virginia Code, I'm not making it up. You have to describe the circumstances under which the remote participation will be allowed, and the process council will use for making requests to use remote participation, approving or denying the request, and creating a record. You'll have to describe how you wish to do it, and then fix the number of times that people can participate remotely. And it can't exceed certain limits. And that's 25% of your meetings, which is a lot of meetings, or may not use remote participation due to personal matters more than 2 meetings per calendar year, or 25%, whichever is greater. So you have to set this anywhere between, right now you've got, I guess, 12 regular meetings. So you have to pick a number between 2 and 12.
All right, let's start with the first one. So, to put language in there that would meet that stipulation, I'm just gonna start with a suggestion, we can go from there. The description of circumstances could be, this is allowed upon request by the council member to the mayor or vice mayor, if it's mayor, for approval 24 hours in advance. So sort of meet those. Some language out there.
Yeah, and really, I would probably mimic what's in B1 through 4, if nobody has a problem with that. You know,
Yeah.
what's the reason for it? Just adopt what the code says. There's a disability, you know.
Oh, I thought we were already adopting 1 through 4. And this was in.
But you have to describe what you're doing. This gives the parameters under the code, and then you have to say which ones of those do you pick? And the easy thing to do is just say, well, for these reasons, you can participate remotely.
Yeah, I think for any of those reasons.
Correct.
we should allow.
So the bigger issue is how many do you want to do? And I think actually, I hated that this interchanges regular meetings and meetings, but I think this applies to all meetings. So we would now be talking, what, 23 meetings?
So let's say no more than 4. I'm just throwing it out there. Please start. Can't participate electronically in more than 4 meetings a year.
So define a specific number as opposed to trying to pull out a slide rule.
Yeah, I think the percentage is sort of vague, and if we cancel a meeting, the percentage goes up or down. If we say a number of meetings, it's there. And if it's well under the 25%, then you know we're never gonna be non-compliant with that issue. This rarely happens. It's just an opportunity that if something does happen, people can attend, but I don't know, I'm throwing 4 out there.
I would agree, because it's something that rarely happens. If you put 4, that's more than enough. And you're not trying to figure out, oh my gosh, how many are my type to? I don't think anybody's looking to do that anyway.
Yeah,
So,
I like seeing all these done. Yeah, okay, all right.
You can still see them, be up there.
If technology works that way. Okay, is there any up, down from 4?
I don't have a problem with 4. And you're gonna put this in writing specifically, and we're gonna get to review it again right before we vote.
I think you need to do it tonight under that 1460, if you're gonna have the inclement weather policy, I think you have to do it. I mean, if you're gonna have the remote, no, wait a minute, you're right. You're right. We can do this as part of that. I'm flipping my times. Yes. Scratch all I just said. Yes.
Okay. So conceptually, I think 4 is a decent number. My red flag is, so suppose they pick the 4 regular meetings, you know, is that, I don't know,
Too many?
yeah, 4 to 12 is a lot.
I don't know, I just said 4 because if you had some sort of broken neck and you were in the hospital, but you still want to participate, I don't know. I don't even know what
But
the
is that
scenario would
limited?
be. Just,
If you have a,
Oh,
we're
yeah,
just
please
talking,
just go there.
How many angels are dancing?
but aren't we talking about limiting the number of other personal matters? Are we talking about limiting the number for permanent disability or other medical conditions? So one.
Oh, I see.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's only for personal matters. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's only on number 4.
That should be plenty.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking all of them. So yeah, 4.
And does the code state 2, or are we open to 25% of? Seven.
I think he said 2 or.
Or whichever is
25%,
greater.
Whichever's greater.
I think 2 is the bottom.
Yeah.
So 25% of 24 meetings is less than 4. So we're okay.
I think the reason it's 2 is because under the state code, you have to meet at least quarterly. So that would be 4 meetings. And the idea was more than 2 would be more than half if you were in a place that only did that.
Okay.
So 4, to me makes sense. It's under 25%, no matter how you slice it, but it's more than the minimum.
Okay. All right, I'm seeing a consensus on that. I'm gonna keep moving on. Okay. Is there any other point on that topic, Stefan, that you need feedback on before?
I don't think so. When I get into redlining it, I'll let you all know individually, before we come back.
Sure.
But I think that's what I needed
Okay.
on both of those.
All right. Now we're gonna, the second section that was, put with some more explanation to it is, an explanation of sort of council, that whole section under mayor and vice mayor, town manager, that clarifies sort of council management form of government. And then adds all of those bullet points in. I don't have any issues with any of those. And then after that is this clarification to the liaisons, and I don't want to skip that other portion, though. I didn't have any comments, but I don't want to skip it because somebody else did. Nope.
I'll tell you where that came from, straight from the Virginia code. The site I have at the end of that covers all of that. And if it's not verbatim, it's almost verbatim. Like, where it said governing body in the code, I put the council, things like that. I personalized it, but I tracked the code language directly. And the idea was exactly what you said, Madam Mayor. It was to show and give authority for who does what. And then that way, there's no question who's supposed to be doing what, and then everything flows from it. And that's a good segue, if you're ready, to go into the liaisons, which I believe we need to tweak some, but the more I hear, I don't know that we need to tweak that much, but I just need guidance. And I have your red line, I created a red line for yours, so I know where you're going with it, but everybody needs to understand it. And I'd really like to just go through that and figure out what the final version ought to say And when it does say it needs to be within the parameters of the council manager form of government. And I think we can do that. I think we can do that without creating anything new.
Okay.
But it's really a question of how to write it. And like I said in an email, you need a body, either a body or a public body to liaise with. It can't be an area, it can't be you can't liaise with football. I mean, it'd be fun, but you need a thing. So that's what I'm looking for. And I think the easiest thing would be to do just to go through these and talk about what you're actually doing. I have a really good idea of what she's been doing and what I think you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing that.
Just one point on that, Stefan. The Economic Development Committee, as it stands today, is a committee of the Chamber of Commerce. It is not appointed by council.
And I'm really glad you said that, because from your comments, I've gone slightly in a different direction. I was thinking, actually had coined the term council appointed entity. And the more I thought about it, especially after your comments, I really don't need that. If it is a council appointed entity, it's like I said, it's really easy. The school board apparently used to be appointed by the council at some point. That's what your charter says. That's what your charter on Unica
Does
says.
it still say
So
that?
that still
says it.
And I've been operating under that, so pardon me.
We need to
But,
clean that up.
I know, that was one of my points at some point. We obviously need to get through this first, and that's not killing anybody, but that's the type of thing that's in there. But there certainly are councils that appoint school boards, and it would be easy to liaise with a school board. But it's not a big deal for whoever it is to liaise with the school board, because the school board is not supervised by the town manager. The only time we need to figure out where to work through, like your laundry list that you're inheriting, that's all good, because it's not getting in the way of the council manager form of government.
Right, so with my new liaison position with the planning, right? I would be liaisoning with people that work there.
Well,
Or just attend the planning commission meetings, or, I mean, how does that, in other words, I can't direct any staff to do anything,
correct.
right?
And the easiest way to avoid that is to not say that in writing, okay? So if you're a liaison to the planning commission, that's perfectly appropriate, that's a body. But the way a lot of places work, the liaisons are actually from staff, like a person's liaison to the EDA, but that person is on the city
Well, I think we
manager.
have that too. I
Okay.
mean, we do, we have a staff connection, don't we, with all appointed bodies?
Yes, for the most part.
So in your case, yes, and then you simply have to, if you're the liaison to the planning commission and there is staff on it or related to it, or the liaison from staff to the planning commission, you have.
So, and not to interrupt you, but I just, kind of want to bring it back to the point that I think that terminology that you had added in, which is not a term from the state code at all, which is this, council appointed entities, terminology. I had sent a revised edition that had kind of removed that particular term.
It did remove that.
It did. But not from the second portion, only from the first. So, although it doesn't matter to me whether it's in the second or the first, doesn't matter.
What do you mean the second? I missed that.
So,
You kept it in one place?
I just left it in the paragraph afterwards that said that the council hereby appoints the mayor to appoint liaisons to other council appointed entities for other areas and whatever.
Well, you struck it where it was defined, and I'm okay with that, because it really doesn't have to be, now that I've learned more, it doesn't have to be council appointed. I'm almost thinking backwards now, that it just needs to be nothing that's under the supervision of the town manager. Not because it's this town manager, it's any town manager, it's any city manager, it's any county administrator. It's not personal, it's the positions, what the code says. So it doesn't have to be, I'm fine striking that word. And I'll come up with something else that defines these groups, and I will, and I'm sure it'll be fine, but it won't be that, it doesn't have to be that limited.
Well, we do have and have had liaisons to the Department of Public Works and liaisons to Public Safety, which is basically the police department. So how do we word that so that we're,
Right, and that's the single biggest issue. I see that right now in the existing bylaw, let's call it the 2022 bylaws, let's go in order, you've been going in order. The first thing we have is public safety. And I will tell you, my first gyration of this, I was fine with that, because you know what? Your charter used to say, at least I think it did, but it says it in Unicode, that the council appoints the chief of police. Did you know that? And so I wrote that in, that was fine.
we did actually appoint it, the charter didn't get changed until after we hired him.
And even in the charter today, after the change, it says the council shall establish and maintain a police department. It's just the chief is hired by the town manager, but the council shall establish and maintain a police department that shall be under the supervision of the chief of police.
So when you hired him, the charter
Was the old
allowed you
charter.
to appoint him.
Correct.
So you can't fire him now because you changed the charter, right? See, that's what it said. You hire,
Right.
you're good to go.
Well, she could fire me.
Oh, okay. I see, okay. But anyway, that, when I thought it was that, I checked that off as, boy, this one's easy. You can certainly liaise with the man who supervises the police department. So I just need some help. Is there some entity, is there a police, or do we have a police?
Well, that's what I was asking. Should we just assign a public safety committee that is the chief, the head of the fire department, the head of the rescue squad, and emergency management or something? Is that where you're going with this, where you want us to have a committee
Yes,
that is public safety?
I want something like that that's a body, but at the same time, when you're talking about these individuals who are involved with it, you have to be cognizant of the town manager. And you have, and I don't think you put it in your red line, my red line, I made it yours. But no, you did actually, you named, it was just administration, and we'll get there, and you specified that's the town manager. But I think an easy solution would be when you have a committee, because we need a name, and it involves departments or people under the supervision of the town manager, then she should be part of
The committee.
either the committee or in some fashion, so that there is no chance
I think that's a great idea.
to direct.
Yeah.
And you all, by voting yes to this, say you wouldn't do that. You say you get it, and this would just be a perfect check for that, so that there's no uncertainty. Because, the worst thing is the appearance of impropriety.
So,
That's not the worst, the worst thing is propriety.
go ahead, Mr. Lee.
I was talking to Kimball Payne. He's going to be facilitating a strategic planning meeting for us soon, and he was saying that it's not common to have liaisons. Like there's only, unless I misheard him, a couple in the whole state.
I agree.
So what do people do when they don't have these?
Well, like I said, my experience is liaisons are strictly from administration to the department, reporting back to the chief administrator, who in council manager form of government is the town manager. So they are unusual, and that's why I've raised the issue to make sure the channel lines are crossed. You can do it, but it has to be in a way that doesn't cross that line. Everything in your current bylaws acknowledges that. It says, we know we can't do this, we know we can't direct. But when you put somebody as a liaison to a department who's on the side that's not managing, the liaison, she's your liaison. You hire her to liaise with him now. and report back to you. So this is just a way to go straight to him. I agree with that. It's unusual. It doesn't mean you can't do it.
I know, like me, for example, I was the public works liaison last year. I mean, I enjoyed doing it, but as a new council member, I'm not gonna lie, it was frustrating because I didn't know what my role really was. I was trying to understand public works and how it worked, and, you know, I wanted to meet the employees and see their concerns and stuff, but I found out that that really wasn't my role. You're not supposed to really interact with the public works employees. So it was frustrating, and I felt like, you know, I mean, I enjoyed my meetings with the town manager and the public works director, but I felt like it was just, you know, them spoon feeding me information, which they could have done to the whole town council in a 5-minute session or 10-minute session at a council meeting. So I might suggest that maybe we don't have ones that are like directly tied to the people that are underneath the town manager, like finance, public works, and the ones, I mean, that's just a suggestion.
Well, I would beg to differ with that for a couple of reasons. First of all, it seems to be a fairly bright line what we can and can't do. And correct me if I'm wrong from our discussion, I can't direct these people to do anything. What I can do is simply talk to the department head. It's okay for me to chat with other people while I'm there, but I certainly can't tell anybody what to do. And this is true of all of us who are going to be liaisons. That they work for you. And that's a clear, bright line. Now, where I find value in having liaisons is to find out the frustrations that an individual department has, and we can discuss it with the town manager. And that's the forum under which we should do it. Is that not correct, Ms. Adams-Jacobs?
I think to answer your question, specifically, as you mentioned, specific frustrations, I think as we talk about the council manager form of government, and obviously our relationship in the council manager form of government with my role as manager and your department head's roles, I think that there can be some instances where we can run afoul of our charter or our form of government based on that role with specific departments. So I think I suggested long ago that we look at some of these positions that are specifically tailored to a specific department and make that broader with a specific connection to our goal areas. So for instance, instead of public works, it would be infrastructure. So we're talking about a broader topic across the board. And something like finance would be government performance and be rolled up into our strategic plan, but broader than just a specific department. Things that I've seen in other local governments historically, once you have council members involved, whether it be intentional or unintentional, in some department matters, things can get very sticky very quickly. So obviously as a manager, my role is to also protect department heads and have that direct line with you as council members. And that's just the role that I play. Every department head is a bit different. I don't want to point out any specific department head and things that have happened historically, but I think it'd be best to keep that at that level as he's mentioned. So that's enough.
I'm sorry.
I just want to clarify on a couple of things. One of the things that is important about this liaison role is that council members get a lens to understanding what is happening and a focus to that. Because to be honest with you, when we just get these massive quarterly reports of all the departments, you don't really get the best clear understanding of that. And I think it's better policy making ultimately, as I mentioned in my email to you, when we're exposed as elected officials to the groundwork a little bit, you know, and in what I have seen from attending VML and other localities and asking them how these things work is while they may not have liaisons, they do have all of these committees. They have a finance committee. They have an infrastructure committee. They have a public safety committee. And so part of the liaison thing is to have this conduit of communication without adding 5 more committees to the structure of government that we have currently, because that's what they do in other places. And kind of just streamlining that.
Yes, Mr. Monte.
Well, we've got our planning conference coming up on the 13th, number one. Number two, we're not going to act on this evening, as I understand it. I would suggest, looking at India, that Kim put this on as an item to be discussed at our planning conference. That way we'll have an opportunity to actually read through these rules, which I haven't, and discuss it more intelligently.
That sounds good to me. Also, I didn't see in our charter where it mentions the council manager form of government, so then we're in violation of the charter.
In the charter,
Correct.
I don't know if you'll find that term in the code.
It does not exist in either one for authorities of towns. It does in counties and non-towns.
Well, it's certainly not council manager, but
Right, I understand. So I want to clarify the point of whether it's a violation of the charter or something.
no, and I've never said it was a violation of the charter. It's just that you lack authority because the manager has the authority under the code to give directions to all heads of offices, departments, and boards of the town. Under her control. Obviously, again, the people you appoint, that's different. And to your, I think, your point about finance, I think you mentioned finance. The charter says that the treasurer, like in a lot of places, used to be elected, like a constitutional officer. Apparently that changed. That's what Municode tells me. And the treasurer is appointed by council, except.
The treasurer, it's called a
No.
CFO, right?
It is in our charter. It
In your
says that
charter.
council appoints a treasurer.
Says
And that's
council.
still in the charter?
It is today.
It is, well, it's in the charter that's online. That's what I call the charter. That's all I have. But my point is, it does say treasurer, but I don't think you have a quote unquote treasurer per se. I think you have a finance director, CFO.
Right.
And so the question becomes, who appointed you?
We did, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, we did
Yeah,
do a
they-
council appointment of our CFO as treasurer.
Same thing with our zoning administrator, right?
You did.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you do that? Wait, maybe we can't do it. Never mind.
You know, it's interesting because I was talking to somebody who used to be involved in town government, and they said that the same thing you're talking about. They appointed the treasurer, and the treasurer used to report to the council. At least that's what I gathered from them. And they were asking, well, how did that change? How do we now have the quote unquote treasurer report to the town manager? And they said, like a lot of corporations have CFOs, and they're separate from the CEO because you should have a separation of duties. So that was an interesting point. I have no idea if it has any relevance to our conversation here, but.
Well, it's important because if, maybe she is the treasurer, and she's the,
There is wording in our code or ordinance or somewhere that says that the CFO assumes the role of the treasurer when there is no treasurer, or something like that in our code or in our ordinances or somewhere.
that's different than that. Well, there are a lot of things like that where, you don't have to have I don't mean this person, you don't have to have a town manager. The code requires that you have a clerk. This part's optional, and if you don't, then somebody else does these things, okay? But if you were appointed by council as finance director name on FINO, okay? And if you're the de facto treasurer, that's different. Then you can liaise with her if that's what she is.
Yeah, according to the code, it is, we amended it to delete the requirement of an elected treasurer, and replaced it with a treasurer appointed by the town of Plymouth Beach Town Council
Charter.
in the charter. And the charter also states the council may appoint clerk, town attorney, other such officers, including the police department, because it then refers to the police department paragraph. And then as well as committees of the council, it can create other boards, departments, as it deems necessary or proper. It can define their duties and functions. Such persons so appointed and set above shall hold office during the pleasure of council. Basically, we tell me what to do, I think is. authority. It just sort of points out in there. It's kind of generic.
Yeah,
And the one thing about your split note, we'll discuss this more at the strategic meeting, like Mr. Montier said, is that I think you referenced 15.3 at the bottom of that section.
what
I
footnote?
don't have it now in front of me. The bottom of the 15.2, 1541.
Right, that's the thing that lays out.
Right. And so I wonder if 15.2-1107, is it more actually in conformance with this? Because it is directly under Chapter 11, Powers of Cities and Towns, which the title of that is Departments, Offices, Boards, etc. So maybe take a look at that before the strategic planning sessions.
Yeah, and am I a part of that?
What I'm saying too, or before, or just have a rough draft of this and we're gonna discuss it there. You don't have to do that.
Have a rough draft of this for that?
We need an advance of something to discuss it.
Yeah, but I need more, unless you want me to generically call things that don't quite fit committees and make her the treasurer. You want me treasurer?
I think we did appoint her as treasurer.
A lot of people run for it. It's been-
I don't want to be a treasurer. I prefer to be a finance director.
Isn't she technically a treasurer?
I technically assume the role of the treasurer.
I think we did appoint her as treasurer. There was a resolution and we passed it. As CFO,
I technically it's a treasurer.
I think it was CFO too.
quite a technicality. But yeah,
Well, if you appointed her, she needs to be the treasurer.
yeah.
And it's kind of the same function.
Right.
Who do I work for now?
All right, we can discuss that at more length.
Okay, so before the 13th, you want me to do my best effort to try to streamline these.
Think so.
And if I can't make it fit, I'm making a committee.
Sure. And then we'll assign committee members.
And if it
One thing
fits, we do it.
I'm not sure is covered, if we want to have a liaison to all of our appointed commissions and bodies, we don't have anybody that's liaison with the Virginia Housing and Development Authority, do we?
But I'm not saying.
They've been,
I'm not
they've been
saying-
operating kind of on their own and it hasn't been very successful, and maybe having a liaison appointed to that body would be useful.
I appoint Karen as the housing authority liaison. I'm just. No, but you're right about that, but we do have the authority to appoint liaisons to these other entities, so we could add that one to it. That's
Yeah.
true.
And then
that is a
change the
board.
names from police department to, or change so that safety, are you gonna say safety? Public safety, that he would actually be liaisoning with the public safety committee,
Right.
not with the police.
And that
chief.
makes sense to me. I was just
Yeah.
trying not to add more bureaucracy to the.
So the ones that are at issue then are these departments, really.
I think it's just a couple, and I'm also fine with adding the town manager to them. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, but this helps. I mean, I think I can get you 90%, not that everybody agrees with it. I think I can get you working draft that updates this.
Will that include some definitions of like what the liaison roles are? Like restrictions or do's and don'ts?
They are baked in. I can call them, move them up, but they are sort of interspersed. And one of the things I didn't want to do, even though there's a lot of red on here, is I tried to make it, if you looked at a clean version, I think I changed anything. I only put things like what you're used to. And so it does say all those things quite well, but not necessarily in one place. So maybe moving it all up and helping define, so you're not out there in the wilderness going, oh, can I look at you, can I talk to you? What does directing mean?
I thought it was really helpful though that you added in that section A through H right ahead of this liaison section because it is kind of there then. Helpful, talking about your notes or whoever did that, the A through H.
Yeah, I did that on purpose.
Yes.
Because I wanted to set up. who
Right.
does what.
I thought that that was helpful, and then there's 3 paragraphs afterwards that are a little bit more.
This came at 8:30 last night, but, I read through the entire bylaws that were in our packet.
In my defense, I started this at 6:01 on January 1st, 2023, so I can get it to you.
No, I'm not saying anything bad against you. I appreciate all the work. So I'm just wondering, how much different is this, or is this the same thing, just with red lines?
I took what was sent in the council packet as it was titled 2022 bylaws and rules of procedure, town council bylaws and rules of procedure. It had stricken in the margin, revised at 2/20-something, 22 meeting. That was stricken when I got it. And the title had been changed to 2023. Everything in your packet was identical otherwise to the 2022 version. I got a Word version of that, and I redlined it based on current law and to make internal consistencies. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So the red line you see is what was in your packet.
Okay,
Okay?
so, all right, so
Yeah.
I got some work to do then, so.
Yeah, but what you shouldn't have to do is go look back at your other one. It's right there. It's just redlined. You don't have to look at multiple documents. You just need to look at that one. Okay.
I think the aspect of what you're talking about, a lot of that clarification is also in section 6 at the end.
Section 6. Oh, as far as your,
Yeah,
I sort of made it, what do you mean section 6?
General,
the generals.
it used to say operating policy, it says general operating policy now. It's towards the end of the document.
Mhm.
The definition of what a council member has authority to do and what they do and what they don't do and all the things that are, where you said it's kind of all sparse in there and it's not
Mhm.
clearly right there. But section 6 is another one that has some of that stuff in it.
Yeah, and it's also if you noticed at the very end of the document, there was this standalone statement. And I didn't really understand it. I have seen some places who sign these, but that's like herding cats. And I feel like you don't need to sign it because you're going to vote on it. And if these go into effect, the majority is going to vote on it. But you can't make somebody who votes no agree to these things that really aren't law. They're just aspirational. So I changed that to a long quote saying what you recognize and what you agree to do by virtue of voting yes. And if 4 of you vote yes, you will have made that statement. If 3 of you vote no and it gets adopted, you still have to abide by all the rest of these rules and procedures. That's why I did that, because it really didn't, to me, make sense to all of a sudden, wait, who said that?
Yeah.
So now I just tried to make it clear. But my point was, that's got some of the do's and don'ts in it that I know I can't give. Direction, sorry, it says it in there.
I think that section predates my time on council, that section of the bylaws, but we left it in there, I think. We're about to talk, the next section is the civility pledge, and it's sort of a synopsis, that paragraph at the back.
Oh, I
is
know.
Sort of that already.
And I have not studied your civility pledge, and I remember Council Monitor had some thoughts on the civility pledge, and that's a whole different ballgame that I haven't been tasked with, but I'm aware that it's out there. But you're right, as I was reading this, I said, that feels a whole lot like that.
It is.
I wonder if you really want, I'm a big put everything in one place person, and if you do act on the other thing, maybe you want to incorporate that into this somehow. I don't know, I haven't studied it, they feel the same. It's just, it gets dangerous when you say one thing one way over here, and then you have a whole other document. Oh, where is it? Was I not supposed to embarrass people in this one? Was it, I don't know.
I think, Mr. Munker, you had redlined that last paragraph last year for us, and it incorporates your changes. The very end of the bylaws, there's a paragraph about. Huh? Yes, he says, let's move on.
Yeah, I didn't change a word of it. I just described what it was.
Okay, is there any further discussion then on that? All right, we'll move forward for the discussion on the civility. Since it sort of ties in. You want to hear it? You want to?
No, I had brought this up at a previous meeting and suggested that as a body, we adopt a civility pledge that would set the tone for how we interact with the public, how we interact with staff, and how they interact with us that might bleed over into how the public interacts with us. If we set the stage for civility, then we have, I think, a better chance of expecting the public to act civilly.
What do you think about putting this in that last paragraph at the end of the?
I don't care where it is. I mean, it would be, if we could put it in the bylaws, I mean, that's fine too. It's still a pledge. I mean, it kind of fits in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think if you're gonna do it, that's a great place to do it.
Mr. Meyer?
Well, it would appear to me that the language you already have with bylaws is sufficient. We don't need to adopt this.
Okay, I'm getting some
I agree
added
too.
on that.
Yes.
Well, I haven't compared line by line to what's already in there, so I can't comment yet.
Okay, well, we don't have to vote on this
Right.
right now, so
Right.
that's a concept, is that we have something in our bylaws and to consider that in lieu of this, or in addition to, or however.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing that I really take umbrage with is pledge. Pledge is a promise that you pledge to the United States. We've even warned other people of not making pledges to other entities. If it's in the bylaws, yeah, we all should be civil, agree. Don't want none, don't start none, kind of thing, but, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So
might-
this, you didn't, sorry, but you weren't at the VML conference, and this is something that came out of the Virginia Municipal League Conference.
Yeah.
And the Virginia Municipal League is part of a larger national league of cities and towns that helps, small local governments, in doing a better job.
And I
And so
sat
this-
in one of
because
those today. And
It came, because it came from this larger organization, they came up with the word pledge. And so, that's why it was presented this way, right over there.
I understand it's not a bad concept. It's just I take umbrage with the pledge part. That's entirely it. I think we should all be civil.
May I suggest this, that maybe, like I said, I have not studied that, I'm just aware that it's there. And I like, if you did that language that's at the very end, if you revised it last year, it's one of the few things that doesn't have red on it, so I like it. I can take what the VML has, because that's certainly a good source, and if there's anything in there that's not in here that seems along the lines of what's in here, but maybe said another way or
I like Tom's version, to be honest with you.
okay.
That's just my opinion, I'm just opening that discussion.
Yeah, well, I said I did too, because I didn't touch it.
So, but I think it does the same essential thing that the VML does, it's just the VML wrote it one way and we wrote another way, but it's still doing essentially the same thing to me. So, I don't know, is there any other, I'll call Mr. Allison first. What was he gonna say?
No, but I was just saying, I was reading through it and it appears that it's pretty much the same verbiage that the pledge, it just doesn't have pledge in it. So I think Tom's just fine for what we're trying to do, for the intent of what we're trying to do.
I'm not sure there's consensus for you to spend more time on it.
I'd like to compare the words. I just haven't had a chance to do that, and I'm not capable of doing it on the run, so. And maybe hear if Stephen has any concerns.
Like I said, I was fine with how that reads. There's nothing that I changed. There's no better endorsement.
Mr. Moncur?
It just has a, it has a.
I thought,
Mr. Moncur did ask.
I think the language in our bylaws as it stands is just fine. Thank you very much. Just leave it alone.
Second.
We do direct as a body, and I'm not seeing a majority consensus to continue. Okay. All right. Move on to the next piece, which is the adjacent owner acknowledgement form for the marina improvements permit review. Is JC doing this? Great.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. The town received an adjacent property owner acknowledgement form from Colonial Beach Properties relevant to 400 and 119 Monroe Bay Avenue. The intent of the project is to construct a floating pier with 7 slips, replacement of a single boat lift with 2 boat lift slips on an existing 17 slip pier, and bulkhead replacement. So the town is just required to sign this form to show as a neighboring property owner that we're okay with it. They'll have to go over town property to access the project site, so that's acknowledging that as well. They have all the necessary local, state, and federal permits. The staff recommendation is to sign the APO as to not delay or stop the proposed improvements. So that's the first matter that requires council action tonight. Not for council action, but for your awareness, as the memo states, Colonial Beach Properties is also potentially interested in purchasing that section of Madison Street at the end. And I guess what makes this different from a typical disposition of town-owned property like we did with the alleyway recently, there is a public boat ramp there and public water access. So if an offer is made on the property in the future, which as the staff memo states may occur, that would be the unique aspect of that particular parcel of land. There is public water access and there is a ramp there that the town at one point thought prudent to invest in. So I guess that's the consideration for the future sale. But again, just for council action tonight is whether or not to approve the APO, so that the project can move forward. And again, staff recommendation is to do so.
Is there any discussion on this item? I see no issue with it, yes. Mr. Moncur, you looking? Nope. Okay. Is there a consensus to authorize the town manager to sign a form for the pier restoration?
So moved.
A second.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And we'll see about the property thing, possibly. Oh, we do have a closed meeting. Man. All right. Moving on to the next section. I move that the town council of the town of Colonial Beach convene a closed meeting for the following purpose and to discuss the following subjects, all of which are exempt by Virginia law from public meeting requirements as indicated. Namely, pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2, 3711A8, consultation with legal counsel regarding the following matter requiring provision of legal advice claim filed by town employee. Is there a motion to go into closed session? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break and then potty break, please. Yep. That's an official term now from Robert's Rules of Order. Yeah.